What does it feel like to be a girl growing up?
Confusing, overwhelming, I think would be probably the first two words I would say. And I think as you're saying that and saying girls having that question of do you see me? How do you see me would probably be the next question. And again, there's such a tendency to shift my focus from how do I see myself to how do you see me? And it starts so early on with parents that I always believe girls who are delighted in feel more delightful, as simple as that sounds. And so from their earliest stages, they're longing so much to be delighted in. And I think that sense of delight weaves its way into their identity, that throughout their stages, they're going to have this sense of groundedness and confidence because you have said as a parent, you're delightful. I see you. I love you. I believe in who you are. And I think they are looking to others to determine that for the rest of our lives.
Friends, welcome back to the Being Sons podcast. I'm thrilled to be having a conversation with Sissy Goff, who God has used to father me, you could say, mother me in my relationship with both of my kids, but primarily with my daughter. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Sissy. You can go on Amazon. She's got a whole host of books that are tremendous resources. And Amazon does a good job of carrying these little summaries here. So I'm just going to read this generic summary of you, Sissy. Sissy Goff, you're a master of education. You spend most of your days talking with girls and their families with the help of your counseling assistant, your pet therapist, Lucy, your Havanese, very cute little dog. She's worked as the director of child and adolescent counseling at Daystar Counseling Ministries in Nashville, Tennessee since 1993. So that's 29 years now.
Yes, it's a long time.
Yeah. You've got a master's degree. Sissy, you speak to parents and children's ministers all across the country. You're the author of 12 books right now, including the best-selling phenomenal book right here, Raising Worry-Free Girls. And then there's an accompanying, like a companion book for like elementary school girls called Braver, Stronger, Smarter. And then your newest book is for teenage girls called Brave. Sissy, you're a regular contributor to various podcasts and publications, including this one now, which I'm so thankful for. But one of my favorite podcasts that I have ever listened to, which I've gone through it multiple times, is your podcast that you do with Melissa Trevathan and with David Thomas, who was a guest on our show recently, Raising Boys and Girls. And that has been a total rescue for me. So, Sissy, I do work with men primarily. My primary job is just to continue asking the question, what does it look like to be a son of God and to walk with him? And in the relationship between our Heavenly Father and men, God strategically places these moments, these situations in our lives where we are hungry, thirsty, and desperately in need. And daughters are one of these incredible conspiracies that God has centered us in so that we can become the best for ourselves and so that we find, a brilliant project to put our hands to. And it's just one of the ways that God has fathered me so much. And in that process,
I love that description of a conspiracy. That's wonderful.
It is. Oh, it so is. Of course, I stole that from Dallas Willard as well. I guess he talks about marriage with that. But I was driving, I think from Oklahoma or something like that down, back home in San Antonio where I am. And I'm talking with a buddy of mine, Aaron, and I'm lamenting over, oh my God, I have no idea what to do with my beautiful daughter and it's breaking my heart. And he said, well, have you listened to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast? And I said, I've never even heard of it. And he said, well, you ought to put that on and listen to it. And so I had 5 or 6 hours left in the trip, and I put on season 2, where you and Melissa and David begin describing the stages of development for girls into womanhood and for boys into manhood. And just so you know, friends, if you want to start somewhere in that podcast, I highly recommend it. Go to season 2, and they will go down. There will be a podcast episode where they talk about developmental stage 1, and then in the following podcast, what do they need from us as parents in that stage? And then they'll move to stage 2, and then stage 3, and stage 4. It's brilliant. I've just listened to it over and over again. And Sissy, in my work with men, I've incorporated a lot of the wisdom that you have poured into that podcast into it. And I have found that some of your wisdom, which I almost quote verbatim, has been some of the most helpful, freeing, and encouraging stuff that men walk away with. So you have had such a tremendous impact. And I just wanted to be able to have an interview with you and allow you to drop some more wisdom on us. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me and for those kind words. That's so encouraging to hear.
Yeah. And so
I love what you're doing. I got on your website and checked out your ministry and just love what you're doing.
Thank you.
With dads and with families.
It's beautiful. It really is. Dads need their daughters and daughters need their dads in ways that I can't quite understand. It just turns out to be something really magical and beautiful, when dads pursue the hearts of their daughters. So just, Missy, I just wanted to start just by asking you, tell us some of your story. How did you get to where you are?
Well, I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas originally. When I was growing up, we were in the Southwest Conference. So I was heading your way all the time, thinking about Texas. And my background is in young life, loved young life growing up, and knew that I always wanted to do something working with kids, but honestly, I'm old enough that if anyone I knew was, when I was growing up, was in counseling, they weren't talking about it. And so the only counselor I really knew of was a psychologist on a soap opera called Days of Our Lives named Marlena, which is pitiful that she's my entry into this profession, but she was. And so anyway, I heard her, I knew she was a child psychologist. And so that was kind of in the back of my mind. And so it was really, as God does so often, I feel like it was one step at a time. My family, we had a family business. We were my grandfather got in the Holiday Inn business back when interstates were opening. And my dad really wanted me to go into that. And I knew that wasn't quite what I was wanting to do. And so just a step at a time. I loved my psychology courses at the University of Arkansas and knew I needed to go to grad school. And so I applied and got into Vanderbilt and was intrigued with Nashville and ended up in Nashville and kept feeling this tug to work with kids in a way where I could ask the hard questions and be somebody who's just cheering them on along the way. And honestly, it was when I interviewed for my internship in grad school with Melissa. And I sat there with tears in my eyes the whole time thinking, this feels like a marriage of exactly what I've always longed for, where it's these deep connections with kids where we can go to really hard places in their lives. And it's relational and it's spiritual and it's all of these pieces coming together that I think create healing for kids. And so, or give opportunities for God to heal kids. And so anyway, that really is kind of my professional story. And so started in 93 and out of that have gotten to write and speak over the years and get a little outside the walls of Daystar. And I'm still counseling 4 days a week and getting to be in both spaces, which I love.
So did you help in the design of the little yellow house that you guys counsel out of?
We all kind of helped with the vision of it. We were in a yucky office building up until that point that we tried to make as cute and warm as possible, and it just didn't quite work. So yes, we were all involved in the process of it becoming what it is now. It's just, it couldn't be a neater space to be counseling.
Yeah, I said this to David, but in preparation for my time with y'all, I went and just started watching the brilliantly filmed little videos with the testimonies from the parents and from the kids. And like I said to David, it's so deeply anointed. I mean, everything from the design of the house, which looks like a Pottery Barn catalog, to it's clearly that you guys put a lot of prayer into it. And I think if, for you listening, if you'll go to Daystar Counseling Ministries and just watch some of the videos, you're actually going to find hope in just watching the videos, because there's, they're dealing with everything that your kid might be dealing with, and just to see that there's hope and that there's love is gonna it's gonna help. So ministered to me for sure.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah. So why kids?
That's a good question. I think there's so much fresh hope that is in hand's reach always for kids. And I think they, walk through things, obviously, that are similar to what we do. And I think walk through more than ever before. I can't imagine even outside of a pandemic, I cannot imagine how hard it is to grow up today. And they fight for hope, I think, in a way that sometimes we can give up on a little bit more as adults. And I think so that piece of it, that impressionable piece of it, felt really important to me. And I think I probably in a lot of ways became what I wish somebody had, what I wish I had had in my life. Mm-hmm. Just that same idea of somebody, not only I had plenty of people who were cheering me on that were so gracious and kind, but I was the kid who smiled all the time and acted like everything was great. And so nobody ever said, Sissy, nobody smiles all the time. That's not a thing. So yeah, I think just helping kids really uncover more of what's happening in their hearts and come to life in that way. And as a result of that, open up more of an awareness of a need for the gospel. Just felt like something still feels like something I feel privileged to do every day.
So you are going to be talking primarily to guys like me who are dads. Most of the audience is going to be dads. There'll be some moms, of course, that'll listen in on this, and dads of daughters in particular. So just so you know, that's kind of where we're going. So you said that here at the beginning of your website, you have a brilliant statement that endears me to you. You confess parenting is a challenging, delightful, heart-wrenching journey that can feel profoundly overwhelming and lonely at times. Amen. Parents need guides who understand the world of their children, and we're happy to come alongside you in this journey. So, yes, guide us. So, first question. As a father, I want to understand this daughter project that God has entrusted to my care. David shared with us that the glory of boys is that they're made to protect and provide, and that God made them to do hard things in the good story that God's writing for them. I know he quoted somebody else in that, but can you just share with us, how would you describe the intended dignity or glory of femininity? In other words, like what glorious end product am I as a father partnering with God to help my daughter become?
That's a wonderful question. And I think I love that you are pointing fathers even to asking that question, because I think in all of these, 29 years of working with girls, I believe girls have lost sight of that question and the answer more than ever before. And so for fathers, you have such a unique role in the life of your daughter to come alongside her and help, I think, call out who she is in a way that no one else can really do. And in that, I think you are calling out probably both the strength and the tenderness that girls have at their heart. And that both, I think, create a lot of fear in girls to get in touch with. And so I think that the ability that you have to tap into that is so unique. There's an author, I don't know if you're familiar with her, named Kelly Corrigan. And she has this book that is called The Middle Place, and it's more about her journey with cancer. But her dad, you can tell, in the first few pages of the book, you can tell how foundational he was in her life.
Yeah.
And so it really is also kind of a testament to her dad, this book. And one of the lines that I will never forget that she says is she's describing him and says all these amazing things about who he was as a man. And then she says something like, he made me feel smart, funny, and beautiful, which has become the job of the few men who have left me since. Isn't that awesome? And I think that is part of your role. I mean, there's so many gifts that you bestow on girls, but I think that ability to say, not only is this who you are, but this is what I want you to expect from everyone who comes after me. And in the words that you use and in the ways that you engage, the ways that you relate, the ways that you know, and exactly what David was saying, pursue and protect her heart. I think you give it freedom and grace to emerge again in a way that's different than anyone else.
What do you see as the primary question that a girl must have answered in her life so that one day she can become the woman that God intended her to become? Like, what obstacles in all of your years of counseling, are you helping girls overcome, or what question are you thinking they need answered most?
I love your questions. I think, off the top of my head, I would say, who am I? I think girls, David talks about how boys are wired for activity and movement. And I would say girls define themselves against this backdrop of a relationship that looks different at every stage of their journey. And they're wired to connect. And in that sense of connection and then that deep longing, I think girls lose themselves often. I remember a girl saying to me, a high school girl, who said, there are just so many voices in my head, I can't get to my own. And that sense of wanting to please, wanting to care for people. Again, so much of who God has designed her at her core to be, obviously, as in all things we know, as a result of the fall, they get twisted. And so I think that, to me, I maybe would have said that 10 years ago, but now in light of technology, in light of social media, in light of the pressures that are surrounding girls, I've never felt like girls feel as much pressure to excel in all things. And even this deep desire to define themselves, and now the ways they're choosing to define themselves is often, you and David may have talked about this, but it's often through pathology. It's often, I'm going to define myself by my anxiety or by my depression. And so to get to who I really am and who God has uniquely designed me to be is going to help me feel free and confident to offer that person in the world, and to be anchored in that. And I think that would be the thing I would worry about most for girls moving into the world without a sense of that.
So who am I? Because I can't offer myself to the world until I get that question answered. And is it safe to be me? Is it good to be me? Right. Yeah. Okay. One of the things that's really helped me have a lot of compassion for my daughter is, coming from some of your explanation through the podcast, is as a man, as a boy, so much of my focus is on what I bring, my strength and what can I offer, and do I have what it takes. And it's hard for me to imagine moving through life with my primary gift being just who I am and not what I bring. It would feel so vulnerable to strip myself of skills and just say, am I enough just being here? And yet I feel like girls are kind of like that. When I watch movies like Cinderella and others, it's not about what they do. It's just, do you see me? Yes. And do I have something to offer? Do you have any more thoughts on the vulnerability of what a girl is going through, like just to make it through trying to figure out a way to answer this question. What does it feel like to be a girl growing up?
Confusing, overwhelming, I think would be probably the first two words I would say. And I think as you're saying that and saying girls having that question of, do you see me? I think, how do you see me would probably be the next question. And again, there's such a tendency to shift my focus from how do I see myself to how do you see me? And it starts so early on with parents that I always believe girls who are delighted in feel more delightful, as simple as that sounds. And so from their earliest stages, they're longing so much to be delighted in. And I think that sense of delight weaves its way into their identity, that throughout their stages, they're going to have this sense of groundedness and confidence because you have said as a parent, you're delightful. I see you. I love you. I believe in who you are. And I think they are looking to others to determine that for the rest of our lives in different ways. And hopefully we have more of a grounded sense of who we are on our own and can get to that. But I think, gosh, as I think about adolescent girls, that is 95% of what I spend my time talking about is what do other people think about me? And how do I navigate the world when it's not only what I wish, but I don't know. And so, that I read a study years ago that talked about how when something goes wrong in a boy's world, he blames someone else. And when something goes wrong in a girl's world, she blames herself. And so as I'm spending all this time thinking about what other people are thinking about me, 99% of the time, I'm going to decide it's negative. And so there are so many knocks against their little senses of self along the way. And it's so hard to weed through those voices to get to what do I really believe is true and what's even important. I mean, I have girls all the time do things like write down 10 things that are true about you, because I just want them to get to some of those things that they believe inside of themselves rather than just the world is telling them. So I think I lost sight of your original question, but
yeah, just the vulnerability, because the struggles that girls and women deal with they just feel very foreign to me. Yeah. They're just not the things that I struggle with. It's all about performance in my heart. Do I have what it takes? And if I feel like I don't have what it takes, then I'll either become aggressive and try harder, just gut it out, cowboy up, or I'll just quit. Go find something else to do that I feel is easier.
Yes.
But girls can't hide from that question, who am I? You can't run away from that. You can't go passive from it, and you can't get overly aggressive. At least in my mind, it just feels like it's a very unique and difficult trap that's hard for me to wrap my mind around. So as a father, I'm trying to understand what is she wrestling with. So this is helpful. You did a little bit. Can you take a little bit more time to articulate the importance of the father-daughter relationship?
Yes, I think, always I have felt like as dads, you have a really unique ability to speak to her identity and draw out that identity. As, Kelly Corrigan proved well about her dad. I also would say in this day and time, anxiety is so prevalent among girls. Girls are twice as likely as boys to deal with anxiety. And what the research says is that often with two parents, there's an anxious parent and a non-anxious parent. My experience is that most of the time, the anxious parent is the mom. Now, I definitely sit with dads who are anxious too, but I think in who God made you to be as men, you bring a playfulness to the world and you bring a lack of intensity to the world that is so good for girls. As women, we kind of move with this intensity that I think sometimes men don't. And so those two things together, I think, are so important for them, because in that they skew things against themselves. They're so critical of themselves, and the pressure that I think girls are under today, they are paralyzed by that anxiety and paralyzed by the pressure. And so I think the ability of a dad to say things like, you got this, you can do this. I had a friend who I was having breakfast with the other day that was talking about, she is divorced and dating a man, and they went rock climbing with her kids. And she said, he looked at my daughter who was struggling and said, "You're better than this. You can do it," which is saying you can do hard things, which is a message that girls need to hear, but not with the same. I think as a woman, I would launch into, what are you fearful of right now? Tell me what's blocking. You can do this. Remember when you did this before? I mean, it would all be good things to say, hopefully, but I don't have the same freedom and confidence that I think that lack of intensity brings. It implies more capability sometimes than micromanaging does. Y'all just don't lean towards micromanaging quite as often as we do. So I think those things, and just playing with them in general, doing fun things with girls. I think that, again, girls just take themselves so seriously. And that lightheartedness is something that I think helps girls feel more delighted in, helps them not take themselves so seriously, and teaches them that they can step into some of the same ways in how they engage with the world. And so, I mean, those are a few of the things I think. From a deeper standpoint, obviously, you speak to much of how God as our Father loves us as women. And I think the way that you nurture and care and are interested. I have a friend who, I remember her talking about how she finished ballet class one day. I think she was probably 7, and got in the car with her dad, and they were driving home. And she said, "I just remember thinking, I want him to ask me something. I want him to ask me something. I want him to ask me something." And he didn't. And she didn't know what to say, but craved that sense of being known by her dad. And I think it's the same thing we carry into our relationship with God of, I want to know that he sees me and loves me and knows that I'm different than anybody else and delights in me. And so I think when a father can do that and step in those places and know her and even reflect to her that he knows her, there's something about it that is nurturing into a girl's toes. I mean, it just seeps down into their identity in a way that is really profound.
I think I'm probably the more anxious parent and not my wife. But I do have that playful side. She and I have taken little vacations and stuff like that. So that's encouraging to hear. And I remember being a kid going, I sure hope my dad asks me a question or asks me the second question. What I find is that when I'm in the car with my daughter, I'm like, what question should I ask? What question should I ask so she doesn't shut me down? What question should I ask? And I do want to ask you a little bit about that, about the back door concept, which has been really helpful. Another, one of the things that I have just received as such a gift by God giving me a daughter is that he has made me grow up so much. What would you say after all of your years of counseling daughters and their parents? What do you think dads can get out of this relationship? I know daughters are meant to receive things from their fathers, but what do you see humble fathers getting as a gift from having a daughter?
That is a great question too. I think I love that you said humble fathers. And I think I would imagine as a father of a daughter, I think there's an unguardedness often to a girl's need for her dad. Early on, it becomes a little more guarded as she realizes that you're a guy and she feels awkward with guys. Yeah. But I think early on, there's an unguardedness that I would imagine evokes a sense of protection and purpose that is different than a boy. And I think in that purpose, that sense of need and that sense of, I think girls can create more vulnerability sometimes in dads, because what I see as in the adolescent stretch is that I think girls can make dads sometimes feel really rejected because they are so flippant and they're so awkward, and adolescents in general, but become so awkward about intimacy, and especially intimacy with parents. Yeah. And I see a lot of fathers pull back in that season, because I think it takes dads back to their own journey of rejection and what that felt like. And so rather than realizing that girls still see them as the man that they are, they can feel like a teenage boy right alongside her sometimes. And so I think that sense of purpose, and I hope any dad of a teenage girl would hear me say, you still have so much purpose. You are so important in her life. And really, probably she needs you to press in that much more when she starts to roll her eyes and act disinterested. She's still interested. She's just more fearful than she's ever been before. And so I love daddy-daughter dates. I always want dads to be making sure that girls are spending time with them regularly. And it's funny, I hear girls talk often. I would say one of the windows of time I hear girls talk about the most with their dads is going to breakfast with their dads before school. I hear a lot of girls talk about how much they love that. And if I had to guess, if there was a camera in the house when he says, hey, let's go to breakfast tomorrow, my guess is she says, I don't want to get up early again. And then she loves it because she feels known and invested in that time. And so I think I got way far from your question, but I think that sense of, I do think girls are going to tap into a more vulnerable place, sometimes in a way that's different than boys will. I know boys will do create some vulnerability too, but I think there is such a rich purpose that I think a father can feel in that sense of, you really are one of her earliest definitions of who she is. And again, what you speak to her and how you communicate with her is going to set the stage for what she believes is true about herself in a way that's different than anyone else. And you have so much power to do good and to help her feel like she matters to the world in a way that's different than anyone else.
I think in my experience with my daughter, who's very independent, I want to get into the stages here in a minute, because I love the way that you describe those. They're very helpful, and they bring some context and a lot of hope that everything's just a season. But prior to my daughter's teenage years, I didn't know how much capacity I had to be devoted to something that was hard. And so it has made me aware that there is a perseverance and a strength in me that I didn't know that I had, but also a tenderness. Like, I am deeply willing to change. There's nothing in my life that I have felt more willing to change for than for her, even when receiving not much in return. It's given me an opportunity to say, okay, Jesus, you were rejected and you were despised by men. I'm feeling rejected and despised by my daughter. So let's let's have a conversation and help me to be a man like you were. And all the while, I'm praying and anticipating that a day will come when her heart will shift, and whatever's going on inside her heart, that as she comes out of the chrysalis and she's a butterfly, that things that were lost for a while are going to be restored, and all that is going to be paid back. So she has changed me in ways that I would never have wanted to be asked to change, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I wouldn't have wanted to go through it, but I'm so glad that I am going through it right now. My daughter's 18, just turned 18 a week ago.
Wow.
And I think she's probably still in stage 3 a little bit, but I'm beginning to see her move into stage 4. So with that said, I don't want to leave you guests and listeners out of of the stages here. So one of the things that's been so helpful is the stages.
Yes.
Can you?
Okay, before we get to the stages, Jay, I have to interrupt
Yeah.
you and say, for any man who's listening who thinks, yes, rejected and despised, I feel confident that you know this, but being rejected and despised by an adolescent girl as a dad has nothing to do with who you are. It is not you as a person. It is who she is, and what she feels about herself is often being shoved over onto you, and her discomfort with who she is in this moment. And so I think any father that's listening, I would want to say, do not take that, do not own that as part of who she believes you are as a man and as a person, because it's just not true. And again, it's that time that she needs you more than ever. She needs you to lean in that much more. So sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make
it's wonderful. Thank you. So I would say that I at times feel rejected and despised. From her perspective, I'm guessing that, yeah, she's rejecting, but she's really not despising. I mean, maybe she feels it in the moment. I would, there's just kind of a knee-jerk reaction that I see in her where she's just not able to think clearly, and it looks like she despises me, but I just keep having to hold on to what I feel the Lord's saying. She doesn't despise you. She doesn't despise you. Yeah, she's rejecting you, but she's not despising you. Don't interpret it that way.
No, she despises herself. And because you and often her mom are the people that are closest to her, y'all are the ones who get the brunt of it.
As early as 10.
As early as 10.
As early as 10, my daughter began saying things like, I hate myself. I wish I were never born. Things that made us just weep and terrified. So I appreciate you saying that. Oh, so much more, could be said, or that I would love for you to say about why a girl would think so harshly about herself. But let's move into the stages here. And I have some questions to follow up after the stages. So given the time that we have here, I want to make sure that do your best to go through them as quickly as possible. And I want to focus primarily on the stages that I get to adventure with dads in, which is that they've got a daughter and they're moving really from stage 2 into stage 3. So they're between 7 and 13 years old. And that's a very difficult transition because they were one way. Half of the girls at these retreats are in stage 2 and half of them are in stage 3. And it actually is an amazing opportunity for all dads to look to the other side of the aisle and go, that's what's ahead of me, or look to the other side of the aisle and say, oh my gosh, I remember that so much. I miss it so much.
Yeah.
So yes, Sissy, would you take us through these stages?
Yes. So stage 1, so Melissa Trevathan, who is our director at Daystar, she and I wrote the book Raising Girls Together, and we break down 4 stages in a girl's development. And stage 1 we call the discovery years, which is somewhere from birth to 5-ish. And everything in that window is filled with wonder, with discovery. And I always think it's funny too. David and I do a lot of seminars, and it's so fun to compare stage 1 because in the ways that he describes stage 1 boys, I think if a little boy discovered something like a bug crawling across the floor, he's going to stomp on it, stick it up his nose, do something really exciting with the bug. Mm-hmm. Whereas if she discovers a bug crawling across the floor, she's likely going to maybe scream, maybe cry, be very emotional, and she's going to come get you as her dad, or go get her mom, and want one of you to experience the bug with her. Because again, girls define themselves against this backdrop of a relationship from the earliest stages. And so do you want me to say like 3 things she is, 3 things she needs at each stage? Okay. So if I had to say 3 things she is in those years, she's relational because of exactly what we're talking about. And the occipital lobe of a little girl is more developed. So she's taking in a lot of sensory data. There are all these fascinating studies about, obviously, girls have more words at earlier stages, but they also can differentiate background noises such as voices. They prefer eye contact to movement like mobiles. There are all these fascinating things about how God hardwired her to connect. And so she is relational. She is also caretaking, which is part of that very same idea. She has more of the hormone called oxytocin being secreted in her brain, which is the nurturing hormone. than a little boy at her same age. She is also emotional from her earliest stages. And that's going to be very different than boys. And there's a lot of complexity from the very beginning, too, because when I sit with parents of young preschool age girls, they will often talk about anger is the first emotion they describe, which we know is a secondary emotion. And so there's often something else underneath. And so from early on, we want to help girls kind of navigate what's the presenting emotion and what might be happening underneath that presenting emotion. So 3 things she needs in those years. She needs boundaries. And, David and I both talk about with boys and girls of all ages, boundaries to create security in kids. And so we want to get those in place as early as we can. She needs bravery and she needs a sense of delight. And we talked about delight already some. And one of my favorite verses is Psalm 144:12 that says, "May our sons in their youth be like plants full grown, and our daughters like corner pillars cut for the structure of a palace." And when I think about that verse, I think, wow, a corner pillar on a palace is not only beautiful, but it is holding up so much. And over the course of their lives, girls are going to be required to hold up a lot, whether it's career, whether it's family, whether it's friendships. All the different aspects of their life, they are going to have to hold up a lot. And so I think it's part of, again, where as a dad, you have this ability to communicate to her, you are capable. Like, you are a pillar. To say that to her in a million different ways over and over the course of her time living under the same roof with you or just having time with you. And so I think that verse to me feels so important for girls thinking about what they need starting early and moving forward with each stage. So those are kind of big picture ideas for stage 1.
Okay.
Can we get a stage 2?
Awesome. Absolutely. Let's go.
Okay. So stage 2, which is fun that you've got a lot of these girls. I just think, they are so rich in this window of their development. They're so warm and responsive and kind. And so we call these the adventurous years. And I always think, how many movies are a girl in this bracket of development? You think about, because of Winn-Dixie and My Girl and all the American Girl. Most, not the newest Disney movie to come out, but most Disney movies, it's a girl in this window. And I think about her with pigtails and streamers coming out of the handlebars of her bike and pedaling her bike hard and fast, slinging mud up on the boys behind her. There's a lack of self-consciousness that's often a part of the stage that changes in the next. And I think, part of why they're always in this stage in movies is because not many of us want to watch a 14-year-old for 2 hours. It's just not that fun. A girl at that stage. So there is an adventurousness that is really important and a really important milestone for them, because also somewhere between 6 and 8 is often the average age of onset of anxiety. And so we want to do a lot to teach her something different before she even gets there, and then really offset that anxiety with reminders of how adventurous and opportunities to experience how adventurous she is, which again is part of where you all are amazing as dads, as giving her experiences with you often that you can do that. So she is in this window, she's fearful, which is part of that onset of anxiety. But also I think all girls go through a normal, I'm not going to go upstairs and take a shower. I need you to come upstairs with me. They just go through some normal childhood fears. And we could talk at length about anxiety. But when I feel like they're anxious is when that fear gets stuck and they can't seem to work their way out of it. And so I think to know a lot of girls are going to hit that place. And again, I think to equip them emotionally with ways that they can combat fear, and even spiritually, that we speak to the truth of that God's protecting them and that you're in line right behind him as their dad. But I think to know some of that's really normal can be helpful. And for us to be aware of our own anxiety not rising up when we start to see some of the normal childhood fears pass through. We can come back to that one. I think they're also relational in this window. They start to, friendships become really important. I always think this is the age where they want the little best friend necklace where they have BEFR and they give someone ST, they just want a little best friend, and can struggle a lot of times if they don't. And they start to have a lot more conflict relationally. And I think I see a lot of dads who let moms handle that. And whoops, excuse me, lost an AirPod. I sure understand that phenomenon happening, but I also think you have a really important voice in that window as her dad. And I talk with girls often about the importance of being strong and kind at the same time, and teaching girls as they start to encounter mean girls or just friends who hurt their feelings along the way, to teach them to have a template of things like, I want to play with you, but not when you treat me like that. I'd love to be friends, but I'm not friends with people who act that way towards me. And thinking about strong and kind, I think a lot of even adult women can lean one way or the other. And so for you to be able to speak into that as a dad, to help her figure out what it looks like to be strong and kind. I have a dad that I work with that I love. He's so neat. And he, before his girls get out of the car every day on the way to school, he says, okay, what are you? And they literally say, I'm strong and I'm kind. And I think they say I'm fierce or something great like that. And every day he makes them say that out loud. And so reminding them again of their identity, and anytime we can weave that in is really important. And I think they're also so responsive in this window to the needs of others. And I think this is when they are often daddy's little girl in spades. You know, they want to crawl up in your lap. They're not embarrassed to be seen with you yet. That's coming soon. They crave time with you. The girl who after ballet, you know, was wanting her dad to ask her questions. I mean, all of those things. And so we want to reinforce that in her too. And I think thinking about that, a few things I would say that they need. One is that I think they're going to need a lot of help with conversations. This is a window where they need to start to talk about their bodies changing. They need to start to talk about sex. And I don't want dads just to leave those conversations to moms. I want dads to lean in those places too. Statistically, when I went to grad school, it was in the early 90s, and the statistics were that 1 in 4 girls would be sexually abused somewhere along the way. Today, the statistics are 1 in 4 girls will be abused along the way, which is so concerning to me that in this age of education and empowerment and all the things that we're doing, the statistics aren't changing. And so I really want girls to have not only have conversations about how to protect their bodies and to understand that, but I really want girls to go take a self-defense class along the way. Not that they ever have to use it, but they feel like they're capable. And that would be a cool thing for a dad to go do with a daughter.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've done some firearm training with my daughter, and we had a blast.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, she actually outshot me. I had to start practicing more.
Did she really? That's so great. Yeah. And I mean, you know, same idea. Hopefully she's never going to have to use that. But to feel like she can makes her feel brave and capable and confident. I love that y'all did that together. So she needs that. She needs perspective. You know, we think about emotions on a 1 to 10 scale. We have a whole chapter devoted to this in our book, Are My Kids on Track? And a lot of girls are living at 10. And they're just, whether it's worry or whether it's anger or whether it's sadness or whatever it is, they are feeling it at a 10. And so helping girls understand you can be a little bit sad or a little bit disappointed or a little bit frustrated. In fact, I encourage parents in calmer moments to ask her what a 10 would be on a scale. And then when you talk to her at night after dinner and she says it was the worst day of my whole life, to say, what number do you think it was? With a lot of empathy, but still it can help her have a sense of perspective. And sometimes I think they get bigger just to get us to listen to them. And so we want to be that empathy piece of it's really important, I think, with girls. And then the last thing I would say she needs in that window is just a sense of grace, because as we talked about, you know, when something goes wrong in her world, she's going to blame herself. And especially as a father, you look very successful to her. You look like you do probably nothing wrong, that you succeed at work, you succeed at home. And for her to hear you as a dad say, I did the dumbest thing at work today, or I think I really hurt someone's feelings. The humility that you talked about is going to help her accept herself when she hits those places too.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like, when I have not known what to offer in her worry, I just felt like the Lord was saying, be vulnerable and let her know that you worry about things too and how you go to God. So I think perfection, while it's fun to think that that's really helpful, I don't think that it's really helpful. And I remember growing up in my dad, when I thought he was perfect, it actually was not helpful to me.
Right.
It really made me pull back and play it safe instead of taking risks, because I just felt like I'm just not my dad. I can't do that. Okay, so that's great.
I've been telling lately parents of perfectionists in my office, I want you to go do something together as a family that no one does well. You know, if you're not athletic, go to a batting cage, go to some kind of climbing wall. If you are, as a family, go paint pottery. I don't care what you're doing, but do something you can't do well. And I love this one dad said, "Are you kidding me? You're telling me to take my family to do something that I suck at." I said, yes, it's exactly what I'm telling you. But I think even that sense of not just hearing about your failure, but experiencing it together.
Yeah.
That we all are learning something together, because often kids, girls and boys are perfectionists, don't want to learn because they want to already be able to do it well. And so we're going to do this together, and we're even going to laugh at ourselves in the process. Is so good for girls. So yeah, you're right. Perfectionism is not helpful for us.
We do these weekends that we call First Bloom. That's the father and the daughter, you know, because she's kind of beginning to bud. And we will inevitably have an adventure like rock climbing or rappelling, where the dad is so often just as scared as the daughter, and they're doing it together. And that is one of the most bonding things for the two of them to do.
Yes.
And then they have time where the daughter gets to pick what they do, and there's a wide range of things, and then there's a craft that they do. And so the dad is so out of his element. He's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's actually one of the things that it makes the experience so special for them to share. Yeah.
So cool. I love that they're having the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. So we still have a couple stages here.
Yeah. You mean just do them fast?
Yeah, do them fast. Yeah.
Okay. Stage 3, the narcissistic years. And that could be all that we say about that stage, because I think in some ways that's the most helpful piece of it.
It is. That word did so much for my heart. Okay. It's all about
me in that window, and all about her. And it has to be for her to become her own person. It is a part of the process. Like we said, I mean, this is when at its apex, our girls thinking about what's everyone thinking about me all the time. And so to know, I had a family come in this week at Daystar who the mom said, I think my daughter has narcissistic personality disorder. And she was 14. And I just said, they kind of all do to some degree. At 14, it's really normal. And so she's relational. She's going to start longing for more intimacy. She is going to be insecure as part of the journey. It's just baked into the journey of where she is in this window. And there's a lot we could talk about biologically. She's ambivalent. She's saying, come close, get away, come close, get away with both parents. It looks different with each of them, but that's going to be a normal part. It does not mean you're doing anything wrong as a parent or she doesn't love you anymore. She needs understanding. She needs a lot of, I can't imagine how hard it is to be a teenager today. She needs strength, where that is not just laying you out every time she hurts your feelings. She needs you to be able to bounce back. And she needs an idea we call the back door, which is connecting in ways that are kind of unpredictable with her, which dads are great at, because it's, I think anything that's kind of shoulder to shoulder or around a task can be really unpredictable. Okay, last stage really quick. Or we're going to call them the autonomous years, where she's moving back to independence. She's relational, longing for even more intimacy, wanted to be a part of a group before. Now she kind of wants a person. I don't think my AirPods fit my ears very well. She's postpubescent, which means she's going to get curvier. And that is something I lean into with moms, because I think moms can be critical of her body sometimes, or panicky about her body and weight gain here. And she's going to like the way she looks less than ever. She's also intuitive, which is something we want to really lean into and give her opportunities to develop in this window. Ask a lot of questions to help her connect the dots. She needs room to learn, to fail, opportunities to do that. Yep. She needs grit, resilience, and resourcefulness. And she needs admiration. That longing for delight has shifted to admiration.
The longing for delight has shifted to admiration. Okay. In the autonomous years. Okay. So the narcissist, that word helped me so much. And for you to describe that, this is so important, dads. she's designed that way. Like God put it in her DNA, all the chemicals flowing through her body. She needs to have a season where she's kind of inside the chrysalis. Something magical is happening. And so a butterfly is going to come out in these autonomous years. But in the meantime, you just have to be strong. Like we just have to stick with her, stay by her side. I had my feelings hurt thousands of times, Missy. I just feel like no one has ever. I've never allowed anyone to treat me this way and stayed in their company.
Yes.
And once I kind of came to grips that that's actually exactly what she needed, I was okay with that. So I'm thankful to you for just helping articulate that that's not her problem. It's not her fault. It's not my fault. It's just the way that it is that she's going to go into that narcissistic stage. Okay. Connection is what I crave with my daughter. I'm thinking here. What is your counsel to me when I blow it with her? How can I most effectively reconnect?
I think always to apologize, to go back to her on your own and apologize. And I think even like we said, that girls want so much to be known and understood, and even to say, tell me how I hurt you. What was it like for you when I said that? And tell me what I can do differently. And because I think as we're asking questions and not just saying, I'm sorry, I blank, I think we're doing the work that girls need us to do in terms of validating their voice too, and saying what you believe matters to me. And I believe that you have valid things to bring to our relationship.
Okay, rapid fire. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Couple quick questions. Okay. If there was one thing that you could program every father to say 10,000 times to their daughter, what would it be?
I love who you are, just as you are.
Thank you. If you could give all fathers goggles that would allow us to see something about our daughters or inside our daughters that we can't naturally see, what would you want a dad to be able to see?
How hard it is to be a girl.
Okay. Well, our time is coming to a close here, Sissy. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and would love to have you on another time. So I'll send another invitation at some point in the future. We'll maybe have another conversation. How would you like to finish up, just to encourage dads? I want to give you the last word here.
I think just to say, again, I love your ministry, and I think any dad who is listening, who would take the time to listen to a podcast about his daughter, is already doing so much good in her life. Just the fact that you would care enough to devote an hour to learn more about who she is and what you can bring to her that's different. I just hope you know, even if she's in the despising and rejecting phase, acting like that, you are investing in her in ways that will reap benefits for her for the rest of her life. You are so important in who you are to her and who you communicate to her that she is.
Missy, would you pray us out? Would you pray for the dads? Pray specifically for us right now?
Absolutely. Father, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for Jay and his ministry. Thank you for this conversation. And thank you for every single father that's listening. And I pray that you would, even in this moment, strengthen their hearts, give them new and added insight into not only what might be hard for their daughters about being a girl and being in the world that they're in and living in and facing today, but also into who they are and how they're gifted. Lord, and that you would give each dad an opportunity to speak something of that truth over who she is today, that you would help remind him daily that his voice and the way he loves her and engages with her matters so much to her heart into how she sees herself and how she sees God as her father. And we thank you that you have given us that reflection. And we thank you that you see us in exactly those same ways. And Lord, thank you for the fathers. Thank you for this time. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Friends, thanks for joining us as we walk and talk a mile or two down the road, the tried and true road to being sons. I want to encourage you to go and check out Sissy's books. She's got a wonderful collection of books that are really going to help you, not only with your daughters, but also with your sons. And she's got a beautiful collaboration on the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. So I'm going to have all of that information for you to go and locate her in the show notes. Thank you so much, Sissy. You're a blessing.
So great to meet you.
Great to meet you. Okay. Bye.